On one bright morning, Professor Hoot, the wisest owl in the whole forest, decided to go for a little flight. He loved to fly and feel the wind under his wings. He hooted a happy tune, hoo-hoo! What a wonderful day! He flapped his big feathery wings and soared up, up, up into the sky. He wanted to visit his friend Polly the parrot to share a brand new story he had just thought of. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and everything felt just right. It was the kind of morning that made you feel like you could do anything. He glided smoothly between the tall green trees, feeling very happy indeed. As he swooped down to land near Polly's favorite branch, something unexpected happened. Professor Hoots flew right into a big sturdy oak tree. "Oof, hoot-a-toot!" he exclaimed, rubbing his head with his wing. That was very strange. He was usually such a careful flyer. He blinked his big round eyes, but everything looked fuzzy. It was like looking at the world through a big blurry cloud. He reached up to his face to adjust his special red glasses, the ones that helped him see everything clearly. But they weren't there. His beak felt around, but there was nothing. Oh no, his glasses were gone. My glasses, my special red glasses. Professor Hoots hooted in alarm. I can't see a thing without them. The world was just a swirl of green and brown shapes. The leaves looked like big, wobbly green blobs, and the flowers on the ground were just little dots of color. How could he read his books? How could he count the stars at night? And how would he ever find his way home if everything was so blurry? He knew he had to find them, but where could he even start to look? This was a real mystery, a very, very big mystery. He decided he had to retrace his steps, or, well, his flaps. He remembered flying over the berry bushes. So he slowly and carefully made his way there. He squinted his eyes, trying his very best to see. He had to be very careful not to bump into another tree. "Okay, Professor," he said to himself, trying to be brave. Think. Where could those glasses be? He peered at the ground, hoping to spot a flash of red among the green leaves. This was going to be much harder than he thought. He needed to be a detective on a very important mission. As Professor Hoots shuffled along, he saw a long, wobbly green shape slithering on the ground. It was moving very slowly. Because everything was so blurry, he couldn't tell what it was. He thought it looked a bit like a wiggly green vine that had come alive. "Hello there," he hooted kindly. "Are you a jump rope that is going for a walk?" The long green shape stopped and raised its head. It wasn't a jump rope at all, it was Sheldon the snake, who hissed with a little giggle. Professor Hoots felt his feathers blush. He had made a silly mistake. Feeling a bit flustered, he continued on his way. A moment later, he bumped into something soft and fluffy and white. It felt like a big puffy cloud had floated down from the sky and landed right in his path. "Oh my," he gasped, patting the soft shape. "Excuse me, are you a lost piece of a cloud?" "A gentle ba," answered him. It wasn't a cloud. It was Lily the lamb, who was munching on some tasty clover. Lily just giggled, her little tail wagging back and forth. Professor Hoots knew he had guessed wrong again. This was getting very funny. Next, he heard a rustling sound in a bush and saw a tall, brown shape with two long things sticking out of the top. It looked like a walking tree branch to him. "Well, hello," Professor Hoots said politely. "It's not often I see a tree branch out for a stroll. Are you looking for your tree?" A head with big, gentle eyes popped out of the bush. It was Daisy the deer, and the long things were her ears. She just blinked at him and twitched her nose, letting out a soft snort of laughter. "Oh dear, another mix-up," Professor Hoots sighed. This was not going well at all. He was bumping into things and making silly guesses. He really, really missed his glasses. How was he ever going to solve this mystery when he couldn't even tell a snake from a jump rope? Just then, he heard a familiar squawk from up above. Professor Hoots, is that you down there?" It was his friend, Polly the parrot. Maybe, just maybe, Polly could help him. A little bit of help was exactly what he needed right now. He looked up toward the sound of her voice, feeling a new glimmer of hope. Polly the parrot flew down and landed on a branch right next to Professor Hoots. "Professor, you look lost! And where are your famous red glasses?" she squawked, tilting her head. "That's the problem, Polly! I've lost them!" he hooted sadly. "Everything is just a big blurry blob." Polly tapped her beak thoughtfully. She said. "I saw you earlier. You were flying near the old stone wall and you were carrying a feather, a tiny teacup and a yellow crayon. Do you remember that?" Professor Hoots blinked. A feather, a teacup and a crayon? That was a very strange combination of things to carry. A feather? Professor Hoots asked. He thought very hard. Oh, yes, I remember now. I found a beautiful blue feather on the ground, and I was taking it to show you, Polly. That was the first clue. It meant he must have had his glasses on when he spotted the feather. He must have lost them sometime after that. So I must have flown from the spot where I found the feather over to the old stone wall, he reasoned. This was progress. He was starting to think like a detective again, putting the pieces of the puzzle together one by one. And what about the tiny teacup? Professor Hoots wondered aloud. Aha, he hooted. I remember. I was having a morning cup of dewdrop tea with Barnaby the bear right by his cave near the stone wall. That was the second clue. Barnaby's cave was very close to the wall. He had been sitting there, sipping his tea and enjoying the morning sun. He must have set the cup down before he took off again. He was getting closer and closer to figuring out where he might have dropped his special red specks. This was very exciting. Okay, so a feather, a teacup, and a yellow crayon? Professor Hoots mumbled. This was the trickiest clue of all. Why would he have a yellow crayon? Then he remembered. Sammy the squirrel, he exclaimed. I was helping Sammy with his art project. He was drawing a big bright sun on a large leaf, and he needed a yellow crayon to finish it. I flew over to his oak tree to give it to him. That was it. The feather, the teacup, and the crayon were all clues that helped him remember every stop on his morning flight. He now knew the exact path he had taken. Professor Hoots, with Polly guiding him, followed the trail of clues. They went past the spot where he found the blue feather, past Barnaby the bear's cave, and headed straight for Sammy the squirrel's tall oak tree. As they got closer, Professor Hoots heard a strange sound. It was a little sound, like something was being polished very carefully. What is that noise? Professor Hoots whispered to Polly. I don't know, Polly squawked back, but it's coming from up there. They looked up into the branches of the big oak tree. There, sitting on a branch, was Sammy the squirrel. He was very busy. He was holding a soft leaf and was rubbing something red and shiny. He was trying so hard to get it perfectly clean. Went the leaf against the shiny red thing. Professor Hoots squinted. The red color looked very familiar. It was the exact same shade of red as his special glasses. Sammy! Professor Hoots hooted up into the tree. What are you doing up there? Sammy the squirrel was so focused on his cleaning that he jumped in surprise. Startled, Sammy turned around, and as he did, his big bushy tail flicked up, and there, perched perfectly on the end of his fluffy tail, were Professor Hoots' red glasses. They were sparkling clean and looked brand new. Sammy had found the glasses on the ground after they had fallen off Professor Hoots' face. He saw they were a little smudged, so he decided to be a good friend and clean them up for the professor. He just didn't know what to do with them when he was done, so he put them on his tail for safekeeping. Professor Hoots and Polly burst out laughing. It was the funniest thing they had ever seen. A squirrel wearing glasses on his tail. Sammy scrambled down the tree and handed the glasses back to Professor Hoots. The professor put them on, and the world snapped back into focus. He could see the leaves, the flowers, and his friends' happy, smiling faces. Thank you, Sammy, he hooted. And thank you, Polly. I learned something very important today. Sometimes when you have a big problem, the best way to solve it is with a little bit of help from your friends.